So good evening, and thank you for spending what I know, particularly this time of year, is very, very valuable time to join us for an update on all of the things going on downtown. I'm sure you have all noticed as downtown stakeholders and residents and business owners that downtown is being disrupted for really good reasons, and we indeed are tuning up our downtown. I want to make sure I recognize our two council members that are here. Councilmember Randy Nelson is here, over here to my right, and Councilmember Mary Jane Dolan. Thank you for joining us this evening. I also want to introduce to you someone who is very, very important to me, and I'm very pleased that he keeps coming back to work every day since November 2nd when he began his job as Deputy City Manager. Standing in the back in the sort of pinkish shirt and waving to you is Charles Hartgrove. He is the new Deputy City Manager, and his responsibilities include overseeing community development, economic development, water resources, tourism, human services, assessor, parks and recreation, and parking. So he has a lot of departments where there is synergy among them. So if you have questions about those or want him to connect dots for you, he is more than happy to do that. And he's not here, but I also want to make you aware that we also have filled the Assistant City Manager position with John Hughes IV. He is an internal promotion, and he will be spending roughly 50% of his time working on building our tax base through helping to facilitate moving people out of poverty with partnerships throughout our community, working on citizen requests, and doing research and analysis as needed. He will be sort of a jack of all trades kind of person. I think most of you know me. I didn't introduce myself. I think it might be in the program. I'm Bonnie Severchik. I'm the new, I think I'm still new, city manager. I started July 1st, 5.5 months in, and I keep coming back to work every day because I think I have the best job in the city. We are pleased to present to you tonight information on 5 different projects that are going on or soon to be going on in our downtown. And I want to introduce you to someone who is probably not a stranger as well, Jim Talion, project manager with our Water Resources Division, or department, sorry, Water Resources Department. Whoo, sorry, Tim and Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. As Bonnie said, I'm Jim Talion. I'm the chief engineer of the Department of Water Resources for the city, and I'm the project manager of one of these projects, and I think that got me elected to represent all 5. I don't know a lot about all 5, but there are people in the back of the room that you obviously have started to communicate with already that do know the details about all of them. My role here tonight is primarily to go over the 5 of them as a group so that you sort of understand where they are geographically within downtown, how they relate to each other in that way, and then also how they relate to each other chronologically, when they're going to be happening, when they will be, when we might have more than one going on at the same time, when one will not start until another one ends, and that type of thing. So to get started, these are the projects. The first one, the Downtown Utility and Streetscape Project, is going on. The community market deck, the two-way street conversion, the Main Street Bridge, and the 5th Street improvements. And I'll just start right in with the first one, which is the Downtown Utility and Streetscape Project, Phase 1, which is ongoing right now. Those of you that frequent downtown know that Church Street between 5th and 8th has been closed for several months now. And the key thing going on in that project is that we're pretty close to finishing up on Church Street. And by the middle of the next month, Church Street will be reopened and Main Street will start to see the impacts of the work. One of the key things there is, though, Main Street, our plan is not to totally close Main Street like we totally closed Church Street, and that there will be one lane of through traffic on Main Street. And here you can see graphically on the screen where within downtown that is Main and Church Street between 5th and 8th. And all of the projects will be shown on this same map so you can get a feel for where they are relative to each other. I will go through all 5 of them. Then the plan was, after I go through all 5 of them quite briefly, then for you to go back to the stations wherever you're most interested in, and it was great to see that you all were already doing that. Sorry we had to break that up to go through this, but wanted you to see the big picture also. So moving on to the second project, this is the community market deck replacement, and all of these projects are being done because they need to be done. We're not just doing this because we want to make things pretty, although we do want to make things pretty, but they are being driven for the most part by infrastructure. The community market, when you park on that deck at the community market, you might just think you're parking in a parking lot, but that really is a deck. There isn't a space underneath it that is open, and the structure, the physical structure, is significantly deteriorating, and this work has to be done. It's not optional. We're not deciding to do it right now because we want to. We're doing it because we have to. And the same thing goes with the first project I spoke about, the water lines back downtown. I was talking to Scott Parkins, who's at the water line table in the back this afternoon, and the average age of the pipes downtown is about 100 years. And that's the average. That's not the oldest. That's of the pipes that have not yet been replaced in this project. And there's a map hanging on the wall in our office that shows these pipes, and they were in the ground in 1910. And we really don't know how long before 1910 they were in the ground. We just know that in 1910 they made a map and they were there. So they need to be replaced. Not only are they in danger of breaking constantly, but the valves get old and the valves don't work, and when things break, if you can't close the valves to shut off the block where it's broken, then you have to go further and further and try to shut them off, and thereby affecting more and more people. So every break would affect more and more people, put more and more businesses out of water. So we're doing these things because we have to do them. So both the water line and community market driven by infrastructure needs, not necessarily wants. You can see the little purple square down there representing the community market, obviously at the other end of downtown from where we are currently working on the downtown water line and streetscape project. The third project, one we have had several meetings about, and this is driven primarily to make downtown a better place to be. You can see some of the list is business visibility, traffic safety, pedestrian access, and less through traffic. We've had several public meetings on this, and we've heard your concerns, and we have addressed them. We hope you have another opportunity to talk to Maggie Cosman about this as soon as I'm done talking. But primarily parking and delivery zones, which we have addressed, and also, I lost my train of thought. Oh, the last bullet there, less through traffic. Some folks have made comments that they're not going to be able to get through downtown as quickly as before once we go to four-way stops at every intersection. And that is not a negative of this project. That is a positive. That's part of what we want. Downtown is not a place where people should be driving through it to go somewhere else. We want it to be a place where people want to come and be and stay. And so we don't view that as a negative, that you're not going to be able to get through downtown as quickly, because that's not what downtowns are about. They're not about driving through as fast as you can. So moving on, well, let me show you the map of that, where that's going to happen. That is all the current one-way streets on Church and Main. Does not include the triangle there where they merge into Rivermont Avenue. Those two legs will remain one way as they are currently, but everything else will go to two-way traffic, and we'll talk about the schedule in a little bit. So that's the third of the 5 projects. Moving on to number 4 is 5th Street. This is another area where you've all had some experience with us making improvements. Again, this is driven by infrastructure, older infrastructure, and one aspect of it you might not be aware of is there's also the raw water line that takes water from the James River up to the water plant on College Hill, and that line is being replaced also as part of this. And actually that line, we have what, about 2/3 of that in the ground now, but that 2/3 is totally worthless without the last third. So we need to get this project done to get our water plant, again, able to use James River water in the most effective way. Not that we love to use James River water, but there are times when we have to, and we definitely desperately need it when we have to. This will also include improvements in the appearance, which we always try to do. Whenever we do any kind of project, whenever there's something we have to do, we try to do other things at the same time so that we only have to disrupt an area once. So if we have to do water lines, we try to do sewer lines, we try to do storm sewer, we try to do the sidewalks, we try to do the streets, we try to do it all so that we get it all over at one time, and we have good infrastructure in that block or that area for many, many decades to come. Hopefully the water lines will last another 100 years after this. Showing you the geography of this. Obviously it's moved away now from this is where the current project is. This is where the market deck is. Now we're moving up to 5th Street, further on the hill. First phase we did of this was the new roundabout at Federal Street. Then we did the section that was, whoops, wrong button. That's this section here we did. Then we did the section below it down to Main Street, and now we're doing the section above it, and this will be the third and last of the 5th Street improvement projects. And then the last project, but not least, the Main Street Bridge replacement. And this is another example of infrastructure that is badly in need of replacement. This bridge is structurally deficient. It's been hit several times. But again, once we have to do something, we want to take advantage of that and do other things at the same time. So, for example, we're not going to put it back exactly the same way it is. It's going to be wider, or maybe wider if you're going under it, longer if you're driving across it, so that it will span space for acceleration and deceleration lanes, which are not there now, and at the same time present a better gateway appearance to people that are coming in from out of town, from Amherst County, and this bridge is one of the first things they see as they enter town, and we'll use it again to do other things in addition to the thing that is driving it that we need to do, because this bridge needs to be replaced, and if it's not replaced, it could result in a catastrophic need for replacement, which would then take more time and be potentially dangerous to people. And it's hard to see. This is a little blip down here where that project is on the map relative to the other 4 we already talked about. Finally, we go back to the first project again, to the current project, the water and the utility and streetscape project, which is going on Church and Main. That is just the first phase of many more phases. We do have, I believe, 37 more blocks of downtown that need to be done, and that's going to go on for quite a while. That's a map of the remaining blocks of downtown that will need to be done over many years. We really don't have a firm schedule. It's a function of funding, and again, it's not only funding for the water line, but again, because we want to do everything at the same time, if we had enough money for the water line, but we didn't necessarily have enough money to do the sidewalks or the streets, we might rearrange the schedule to some manner so that we can get everything done. But all those blocks eventually need to be done. You can see the gap right here where this piece is underway. You can see the gap here on 9th Street, which we already did, about a decade ago. But other than that, most of the blocks of downtown still need to have water line replacement, and we will continue to try to do the best job we can when we have to replace the water lines. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about the schedule and when these various things are going to happen. Now, right now, you can see we are right here, the end of December of 2016, and we have 2 of those. Well, one is ongoing. The downtown project is ongoing, has been for many months, as you're aware. But right after the first of the year, we plan on starting on the community market project. And that's going to take about 4 months to do and should be done before the spring market season opens up. As we finish the downtown project through next summer, the end of next summer, when it finishes, that's when we want to do the conversion to two-way streets. And you can see the two-way conversion shown in August and September of next year. And it's shown as 2 months, and there's going to be a lot going on for that 2 months as far as making changes to infrastructure and signals, but it really won't affect traffic. And for the driving public, it's pretty much going to be an overnight change. You'll come to work one day, and it will be one-way streets like it is today, and it'll probably be over a weekend. We haven't really nailed down the exact date yet, but you might come in on Monday morning, and there will be two-way streets on Main and Church. But it's going to take a couple months of planning and infrastructure building to make that all happen, what will appear to be almost overnight. Once we finish those three things, then we're going to start on Main Street, the Main Street Bridge and the Fifth Street project. And that's one of the other concerns we have heard expressed from citizens is the viability of doing them both at the same time. And you can see we are planning to do them both at the same time. We really feel like that's the best way to do it. They both are in desperate need to be done. We don't want to delay either of them for another year. And we also feel that you have, back at the stations, we have maps showing some of the detours that will be resulting from the Main Street project and some of the detours that will be resulting from the Fifth Street project here. And then there's some other through traffic routes that could serve either or both projects, but you can see they really don't grossly interfere with each other. They are on opposite ends of our downtown, and we're fairly confident that we can make this happen without an overwhelming influence, not much more to most people than would occur if only one or the other was going on at one point. Going back then, when those two projects are done concurrently near the end of 2018, then we will go back to the downtown project and start on phase 2 of that. And we haven't really picked where in this realm of possibilities phase 2 is going to be yet. We're still weighing the pros and cons and trying to figure out the best way, the way that's going to interfere with your lives or businesses the least. And so overall, that's basically my mission, is to sort of give you this big overview picture on a small scale of how the 5 projects relate to each other. We have various people at the tables in the back. I'll ask, I won't be at my table. Heather Kennedy's going to be at my table because many of you know Heather. She is the public relations person for the downtown project, and she has, if you have a business in the area of that project, you already know her. She knows pretty much every business owner there, many of the residents, and that's her role, to make sure that she helps us, the city, and us, our contractor, interface with the people there. And she's going to be manning the table for that project that I'm the manager of. Joe Smith is going to speak to you about the community market and parking deck project, and maybe you've already talked to him. Maggie Cosman, the city traffic engineer, will be talking about the two-way street conversion to those of you that want to talk to her. JP Morris over here on the end is going to talk about the Main Street Bridge project, any of those that you need to talk to. And then Scott Parkins, who I mentioned earlier, on this end will be talking about the Fifth Street improvements. I think you also have been handed little passports to get stickers at each of the stations, and if you get all 5 of those, if you talk to all 5, we're going to have a drawing at the end for some merchandise from downtown merchants. And we also, I think I covered that roughly, 2 winners. Basically, I am willing to take questions now about the big picture, but if you have questions about individual projects, you really need to go to the individual stations and talk to the people there that know more about those projects. After, did we specify a time, Bonnie, that we were going to allow? 7:30 we'll reconvene, and it is now 7:04. So that's about 25 minutes that you'll have to talk to as many people as you want to. We will again take questions then at the end and have the drawing if you have questions overall. But before we break for individual station conversations, does anybody have any questions about the big picture, the overall? Yes, sir.
Well, you said you have 6 phases, right? You're going to finish 1. But I thought I heard you say it's not going to go progressively down the street. Like your second phase might not be the next 2 blocks in that order. You're just picking up.
It might not. We just have not decided because there are just so many factors that are constantly changing. We actually have at previous public meetings twice announced what phase 2 was going to be, and both times we've decided, no, that's not going to work. So we've decided not to put out a third wrong version of phase 2. We're going to wait until we're pretty sure what we're going to do, and we have to make that decision roughly by the end of, in order to start construction here, we have to make that decision roughly near the end of next year because it has to be designed. So we have to send it out to a consulting engineer to design it. So we will be making that decision by the end of next year, a little less than a year from now, but we're really just not ready to do that yet. Any other overall questions? Yes, sir.
Yes. All these projects going to coordinate with CSO projects or other downtown development projects. There's going to be any coordination there, so to avoid, running into each other and making a confusing
That's a
mess.
great question. CSO, I don't know how closely all of you follow the CSO program, but that program has changed drastically in the last few years also. And for the past several decades, we've been having infrastructure projects all over the city in order to reduce our combined sewer overflow. And that program has changed now to the point where we are not going to be doing those types of CSO projects in the future, except for 1 or 2 very small exceptions. For the most part, all the vast majority of the future CSO program work is going to be done at the wastewater treatment plant. And it's a pretty significant change in strategy. I can talk to you about that if you're really curious about the change in strategy. But it is very different, and for those of you that are used to having CSO projects all over the city, those are, for the most part, not going to happen anymore. The second part of your question, the coordination with development. We have the Virginian project under construction right now in the midst of our current project, and that is Danny George is here in the front row smiling at me. That is a coordination extravaganza. We are continually, almost daily, talking to each other and working through things like when are we going to close his alley so that we can pave the driveway entrance and he can't get into it anymore. And we do that, like I said, pretty much daily. I don't particularly see I saw Linda Jones here, other people involved in the Academy of the Arts, the Academy Center of the Arts, as it's been renamed, on Main Street. A lot of coordination with them. They're ready to move into a building program, and we have had lots of meetings with them on the interface of how do we build the sidewalks in front of their space and who builds them and when do they get built. And I think we have been fairly diligent about doing that, and that's part of the reason we haven't picked phase 2 also is that there could be other private infrastructure developments that might impact how we want to do this in the future. So yeah, we are paying a ton of attention to that. Danny's nodding his head. Yeah, we are. It's not always fun every day, but we are paying a lot of attention to it. Other overall questions?
Question.
Yes.
With the new streetscapes, have y'all calculated up how many parking places in the city you're going to lose by taking out parking on one side of the street?
Absolutely, I believe we are gaining parking under the current project because of what we're doing. So yes, that is a continual part of the calculations. Phases 2 through whatever, we have not done the design work on that yet, but that is always a part of our program. We never can forget parking.
You've gained parking on phase 1?
We will when it's over. Is that true, Maggie? I'm not. Okay. Wanted to make sure I wasn't telling a story there. Any other overall questions? Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Jim. My question deals with the two-way traffic and the decision to complete it at the stage, which is relatively early on in relation to the other projects. Why is that strategic to place it there versus postpone it and see how things go downtown and make the conversion further toward the end?
Well, as you can see, we are actually not going to be working on the downtown project for a good year to a year and a half. We're not going to get back down there till the end of 2018, and we really want to get two-way traffic implemented.
What's the compelling reason to do it within the next 6 months?
To get it done, basically, if we're going to do it, a lot of the discussions have centered around, for a long time we talked about, are we going to do it, are we not going to do it? For several public meetings that was sort of on the table. At one point we reached the point where we said we're going to do it, and once we reached the point where we said we were going to do it, we wanted to do it the first chance we had. And right now, with the ending of this project right now, we already have major changes in traffic flow downtown. The norm is already broken down there. So we figured it's a good time to not go back to the previous norm, but to go back to a new norm when we reestablish it. You know, it would just be more disruptive if we went back to the previous situation and then we had to change it. Right now, nobody is used to the previous situation anymore because it hasn't existed for a long time. So it makes sense to us to do it as soon as we're done the current project and create that new norm to move into the future.
I understand that and I appreciate that. In the context of evaluating all the issues, and I don't want to debate it tonight, but it seems to me speed is a critical element that two-way traffic addresses. And there are other ways to deal with speed other than to create two-way traffic. And I wondered if there's going to be some opportunity to weigh in on that before the final decision is made.
It's my understanding the final decision's been made. So you obviously have more authority in the city government than I do. But I would like to break the meeting. We can talk about it during the break and then give other people the opportunity to, I'll take one last question before we break and we will come back then. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just on that same topic, I don't know, what's the advantage of going with two-way traffic? It seems to me like it's going to make things a lot more disruptive.
Okay.
What is the advantage of that?
That is obviously one of the 5 projects, and we can either talk to Maggie about that, you can talk to me with that during the break, and we'll come back and address that at the final closeout. Okay. So for now, go and talk to the individual people. Come and talk to me if you feel that's what you need, and we'll talk about whatever you want at the end. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for hanging with us. Hopefully you got an opportunity to meet with one or many of these folks. And we're again open to questions again, hopefully about the big picture. Hopefully you addressed your individual issue questions prior to this when you were at the tables. So what kind of big picture questions do we have left? Yes, sir. Signage.
Sorry. I'm referring to signage, whether it be the street names, directional signage. Will all that be replaced with this whole new streetscape project?
The street name signs will be replaced with the two-way conversion. As far as the wayfinding signs, some various groups are working on looking into updating the wayfinding signage. I believe Lynch's Landing was one of those groups looking into updating the wayfinding signage.
And they will be bigger than they currently are?
I will leave that up to the wayfinding groups. The wayfinding signage. Yes, they were working on improving the visibility of the wayfinding signage is one of the goals of updating the wayfinding signage.
Yes.
What are your plans for public arts? With all this city money being spent, state money, federal money being spent on construction, what's the visual appeal?
We have several things ongoing. I don't think anything has really gelled yet specifically, but we have talked about that on several different locations. I don't have anything specific, but it's certainly on the table. And if you have anything to add to that, I certainly have folks that would be glad to talk to you about that, because nothing has really come to the front to say this is what we're going to do, but we're trying to do some things in that regard.
How about a public workshop where people could actually come together to talk about that? Heather can invite anyone and everyone.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about things that aren't really gelled yet and might involve other people's money that they're not committed to spend yet, but we're talking to folks. Joanne, yes, I have a question here, and then where's Joanne? We need Joanne to come up here and do a drawing for us, but I'll take this question.
I asked this question at the table, and I think I've got a good answer, but I just want to be sure. On the two-way street conversion, do we have examples of other cities that have had similar situation going from one-way to two-way, and what the results in those cities were when they made the change?
Hi, I'm Heather Kennedy. I did some background research for the two-way traffic conversion. I'm going to go ahead and give you my business card, but certainly there's a handout that we put together that talked about the outcomes of two-way traffic and why it was a positive impact to some of the communities that I did research. If you want specific names, I'll be happy to meet with you and give you all the information. There was about a dozen communities that I did research on, and many of them were actually in Virginia. Some are throughout the United States. I also looked at a community in Switzerland. So it's not a topic that is foreign. Lynchburg is certainly not the first one to do it. Again, I did do most of the background information. I'll be happy to talk to you about, specifically what communities did what when and what the impact was. I have a lot of research information on it.
And I'll add one comment. I had one person come up to me during the break. Right now on Church Street, where it's highly disrupted, but because of the lack of access due to construction, we've had to make 3 blocks of Church Street into two-way streets, into two-way streets. And the person commented on how great it was, how much they really loved it, and they didn't want me to go back to one-way streets when this particular phase was over. So I was just really glad to hear that the first experience we've had in Lynchburg of doing this has been positive, at least from some business owners' perspectives. So, Joanne, do you want to, how are we going to? Oh, one more. Yes, sir.
Yes. Again, on the two-way conversion is something I've expressed my concerns about, and whether significant engineering has been done, an analysis of what the impact is going to do. Specifically, I think the fact that we are I was surprised again tonight that the timeline has been accelerated for this without, again, sufficient study, and in my opinion, haven't been done. What's going to happen with the city buses in front of near the free clinic and near Wells Fargo, that there's not a plan of where they're going to go and how those are going to be addressed to get them off the street, and whether that will be done prior to the conversion. And then also, I'm extremely concerned about what I think, instead of making it more pedestrian friendly, is going to make it more a hazard for pedestrians, especially I think most of the other stoplights, I've become a believer since the stoplights at 8th and 7th have been off. But I think the stoplight at the intersection of 9th and Main going away with the pedestrian traffic there is going to be extremely dangerous. I would strongly encourage you to do a study, how many pedestrians cross there, and make sure that from an engineering standpoint, it's been evaluated what the impact that's going to be. Because I'm there on that corner, I watch how much traffic goes through there, and I think that stoplight going away and is going to be potentially a hazard for pedestrians.
Are you saying Main and 9th? Is that
9th and Main,
9th
yes.
and Main. That's not going away, right? It is going away. Main and 9th is going away. Okay, all right. Appreciate your comments. You didn't ask a specific question, did you?
If there was a possibility that there would be an examination of the number of pedestrians that walk back and forth there before the final decision is made for that stoplight to go away.
At this point, we are certainly willing to look at things, but it's my understanding that we're making this conversion the end of this project. So do you have anything to add? I mean, we have done a lot of studies, and obviously you've certainly been a person who's participated in many discussions on this. We've looked at the loading zones.
And I appreciate that, by the way.
Thank you. You know, we don't just proceed without input. There was another person who came up to me during the break that was strongly in favor of businesses that want to see two-way traffic down there, and we want your business to be successful. That is our goal, absolutely. We do not want to do anything to damage your business. We're not going into this blindly. We're certainly willing to continue to work with you to make your business be successful and to figure out any complications that result from this. And we're quite confident, really, that we're doing the right thing for you and for all the business people in the room and for all the residents in the room and for all the residents from other parts of the city and other communities and tourists who come. I heard some comments about how the tourists come and they feel intimidated by one-way streets because they don't know how to get to places, and it's confusing, and that there are a lot of the people that we want out-of-town money spent in our city. And if we intimidate tourists with confusing traffic configurations, then they don't forget that, and they leave and don't come back. Now, obviously, there are a variety of opinions on that, and I don't run a business downtown. But I just encourage you to continue to voice your concerns, and we will continue to listen.
Thank you.
Has everyone turned in their passport that wanted to do that? Scott, you want to talk to me? Stephanie Andrews and Susan Elliott. Susan here? In here? And Stephanie? It's not you. It's another Stephanie. I was looking at you. We'll call the other the real Stephanie. Thank you.
But before we close, I just want to say a few words about two-way traffic. When we met back in either May or June, there was quite a bit of discussion about two-way traffic. And we did tell a former city manager, told city council that we were moving forward with two-way traffic. Here's the thing, y'all. If it is, we believe we have taken all of the comments into consideration. We've incorporated loading zones, and we don't know what we don't know, but neither does anybody else, really. So if it is an epic fail, we will figure out a way to go back. It will be expensive to go back, but we really believe that this is the best thing based on our research to make downtown a destination and not a thoroughfare. So that's where we are, and that's how we're gonna proceed. We know that it's still a point of contention with people, but we are going to do our very best to accommodate the concerns, and we believe we have done that up to this point. So we'll hang around for some additional questions one-on-one, but other than that, we wish you the very happiest and merriest of holidays, and downtown rocks. Thanks.